Okay, it's on YouTube now. Hello? There's about a 30-second lag, I'm guessing. There's about a 30-second lag, I'm guessing. 20 seconds, actually. There's about a 30-second lag, I'm guessing. 20 seconds, actually. Morning, Don. I'm good. I'm good. Less so. It seems like a lot of the energy has been taken out of the world for the past little while. How are you and Marie? Yeah. How's the recovery coming?
No, I don't think you've taken in. Are you at the where Raj is now here?
Who can stand up or to move, and so that's a good thing.
You can see him.
That's wonderful.
Oh,
Is it
Marie just
striking?
walked in. Marie just walked in the
Oh.
office here, and you're on the iPhone, so that's good.
Great. So I just wanted to. Oh,
Okay.
so that means you guys are.
Yeah, yeah. And Marie's downloaded all the information here. So,
I don't think he can hear us though.
oh,
Just a minute. No, I don't want the phone. I want to talk to him here. I don't want the phone down. Raj, can you hear me? No, see, he can't hear. So how do I get the?
okay. I'm talking to you on the phone, but I can see you and your mom, but Marie can't talk to you.
Okay. And I've
Okay,
also got Marie here, or Mary Bishop. How are you, Mary?
Good morning.
So I think probably here, let me just do this. Okay, so we've got a few people on the line. Mary, I sent you an email that you could connect to us via YouTube.
I've got it.
Yeah, if you go to your email, just click on the link. You should be able to find us on YouTube.
Okay. He just sent that this morning.
Yeah, it's an email I just sent.
All right, so I click on blue wording HTTP.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And then do I have to do anything else?
No, that should be good. Just let me know if it works.
Okay.
To get out of here now.
It's just circling around. Oh, yeah.
Good morning to everybody there.
For a second. There we are, yeah.
Thank
I
you
can
for.
see you now.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I think we've got other people joining us. So you can, there'll be a 20-second lag between YouTube and our presentation. So I'm going to hang up now and you can watch us on the YouTube.
Okay, well, thanks for doing that.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, so Mary's picture won't come on.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you joined, Mary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Bye now.
Hello, Raj.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes. Could you do the same thing for me, please? It's Ed.
Oh, hey, Ed. Yeah. So I'll just send you a video link then.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can, you'll be able to see us, but you won't be able to talk via YouTube. But if you keep this connection, you can talk to us.
Okay, just wonderful. And thanks very much for doing this for us.
Oh, my pleasure. Nicholas, are you there? I see Nicholas Winder.
Oh,
Hey, Sean.
morning, sir.
How are you?
Just fine, thank you. I
Can't-
think I talked Fee into joining us as well.
Awesome.
Just wanted to make sure we're set up. I'll be back in a few minutes. I just
Sure.
gotta get some coffee and an orange.
We could. What do you want to sit? You'd have to sit side by side.
Yeah, if you want to go in there, you can sit in the chair behind her. But I can sit on a chair behind.
What's that?
Rajan, can you hear me?
Hey, morning, Maya. Yep, can hear you just fine.
It only gave me the option of audio, which is fine for me.
I can give you video if I can send an invite for video. If you need.
It's asking me to call.
Oh, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. I can hear much better. Last time I did video, I couldn't hear.
Sure.
Check.
You don't need video for me, do you?
Nope. Somebody just checked.
Yeah, that's me, Nick.
Hey, Nick. It's Raj. It's nice to meet you via the Zoom internet.
Good
Yeah.
morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Celine.
Hi,
How are
Celine.
you doing? Do you have
Good.
my,
What's that?
you don't need my picture, right? I'm in the top right-hand corner. It just says live.
Yeah, you're all good.
Oh, okay.
How do we get?
So do I stay on, wait for the meeting?
Yeah, sure. That's perfect.
Okay. Okie dokie. How are you this morning, Margaret?
Great. And Mary's on the line or on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah, she came home Monday.
Okay.
only gave me the option of audio, which is fine for me.
I can give you video. I can send an invite for video.
It's asking me to call.
Oh, we can hear you just fine.
Oh, coffee.
Oh. How's it going? Good. Okay, so I wrote down that I did that we. Are you just going to go with it or you want to talk about it? And, if I thought it was possible. And I've got 155 of it. Good, thank you. Bye. Bring up pen machine. So what's happening at your place this morning?
Have the usual porridge.
Well, you're upstairs, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Just closer to the internet
Yeah.
connection.
So you've got people on and they're muted
Yeah.
with no video?
Yeah. A couple folks have signed on. They say it's better without the video.
Okay. Fancy dancy. See, you got some chats going here too.
So Celine,
Yes,
can you see your mute button on your Zoom?
on my mute. Where would that be?
Yeah, you'll just have to look for it. Otherwise, I'll just mute you and you can text me if you want to say something, just so we don't get feedback.
So to text you or whatever, what do I do? I see the little phone thing.
Yeah, I think it looks like a microphone. In my screen, it's in the bottom.
Not a telephone?
No. Maybe.
No,
Maybe.
it's a microphone.
Okay.
Well, where do I find that?
I think that if you take your cursor.
She's
I
probably.
don't have I just have my phone.
Oh.
It's an iPhone.
Yeah. So, but if you can drag your finger then down to the bottom, this menu will pop up, and there's a mute button on the very left.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
Yeah. So when you're just listening,
I think I'm muted. Can I hear you though?
we can still hear you.
I barely hear you.
Just try turning up your volume, maybe.
My volume is at maximum. Oh, maybe I can try something. Just leave it. I've got Bluetooth. Maybe it'll connect.
Bluetooth.
About 6 months from now, we're going to say, oh yeah, remember when we were still getting used to using Zoom?
Well done.
Okay, I'm good. Live on.
Are you gonna make some tea?
Sure.
Do you want some tea?
Sure.
That's better. I know you looked real hard for your notes, Raj. But I remembered 8 things that various people have talked about.
Nice.
And Lucas and I had a meeting this morning about this.
Yeah.
So it's 10:30 there.
Yes, it's 10:30.
We're getting ready for lunch already.
All right, well, don't break too early.
Can you hear us all?
Yep. Video if you want, but I think you have to organize it on your end.
Raj, is it Jessica that made that lovely poster?
Yeah.
Was she able to join us this morning?
Not sure, actually. I've been feeling slightly under the weather.
Okay. And what about Seb?
Seb's out of commission at his parents' folks by Onaway.
Oh, okay.
Who's that?
Me? Mary, Trevor. Linda.
How do I unstop the video?
Okay, hello.
Hey, Linda.
Hi, Maya.
Hello.
Hey, Kaz.
Hi.
Hi, Cass.
Hey, Margaret.
Hi, Kaz. Hi, Margaret.
Okay, we've got a few people.
Ed's still on?
He's watching via YouTube. Is that Alex?
You want to see our faces? I can set the video.
Yeah, it's nice to see your faces.
Rajan, I don't know how to do that.
Are you using your phone?
Yeah.
I'll just send you a message to turn on your video.
Okay.
There you go.
Hi, Maya.
I can't see it. Oh gosh. Oh gosh.
Your hand is fine.
Trevor, we can't see you.
We can't see Rajan.
I can see Rajan and Maya and Margaret and Lucas.
Hi, Lucas.
Hi, good morning.
The phone thing keeps popping up instead of your video.
Yeah, it does.
That's probably maybe someone's. Oh, I think that must be. I think I know who that is.
How's Brenda? Hi, Brenda. Is Brenda on?
Brenda Bomer?
I hope so.
Linda,
Maya.
looks snazzy.
Okay, I need to mute this one. Oh, here we go. Okay. Are we ready to roll? Seems like we've got 13 folks. what I'm gonna do, there's a few folks who may have background audio that's kind of, yeah, interrupting. I'm gonna mute all. Does everyone know how to use a chat button? To let,
No.
No.
Wouldn't hurt, Raj, that maybe Lucas can help too. Just give us a bit of a tutorial. I know you're very experienced. You got 24 hours of this under your belt.
yeah, so yeah, let's start it. Welcome everybody. Looks like we have 14 folks from at least 2 provinces in Canada. This is actually our first big Zoom audience with many folks from multiple areas. So I know a lot of you, well, I guess first of all, just to introduce myself. My name is Rajan Ratnavalu. This is my mom in the background. Yeah, so I'm one of the coordinators for Sunrise Cooperative, and we've been working on this project for a good 1.5 to 2 years, slow but steady, and essentially trying to address the challenge of access to farmland. As this is our first get together via Zoom, let's just walk over a few things about the Zoom platform itself. One is, unless you're muted, we can hear you. And that includes if you're watching something in the background. So try to find the mute button if you can.
Can't even find the volume.
Oh, hi, Trevor.
Hi, Trevor.
So if you're at a desktop, the mute button is in the very bottom left-hand corner. And let me see if I can share my screen.
What do we do with the mute button?
Just click it.
Click it?
Yeah.
So you won't see the menu until you drag your cursor down to the bottom. And
Oh,
the men-
look at that.
Yeah. So in the bottom left-hand corner on a computer screen, I'm not sure exactly where it would be in the iPhone. Anyone using
In the iPhone, if you put your finger near the bottom and you tap near the bottom, a menu comes up and it says mute on the left-hand side.
Okay, great.
So should we all do that, Rajan?
Yeah, so everyone should be muted except if you are wanting to speak.
What's your name?
And if there is any noise in your side, then your screen will pop up automatically and be shown to the rest of folks. There is a chat option. I see Maya's just used it. If you click on the chat button, you'll see at the very top a YouTube live stream. So anyone who has trouble connecting via Zoom can use the live stream. And then if you want to chat but without using your voice, you can type in whatever you want to say. Yeah, that's sort of the housekeeping. Anything else? Any questions about Zoom?
So then on the bottom, if you're using an iPhone, you just tap on the bottom and it says more. And when you go to more, then you have the option to chat.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so why don't we, first of all, I'm glad everyone's around and apparently safe. These are extraordinary times. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to connect. And why don't we go around, maybe starting with you, Sean, then Lucas, then Maya. Fiona's there as well. Just one by one, let's introduce ourselves and say hi to everyone, and just maybe briefly what connects you to this, interests you to this particular project.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Sean from Winnipeg. Fiona and I are at our house here, not too far from the Forks. We feel very connected to your progressive family there in Alberta. I think lots has been happening prior to this virus hitting us. There was a wave of social entrepreneurialism kind of coming in. I think that wave is still going to hit shore. And one of the things that Raj has us excited about is thinking about using entrepreneurial skills in to look in the agricultural sector creatively. So we're looking forward to talking about that. And I'll have a bit more to say as the morning unfolds. But Fiona's son speaks Ojibwe, and the Ojibwe here in Treaty 1 will say Mino Gijigan. It's going to be a good day. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay, my name's Fiona Muldrew, and yeah, I'm really interested in your project and all you're doing, and yeah, I'm also interested in ecological education and language camps. And so I was thinking that may be a possibility for you, doing some kind of language camp or culture camp, environmental education stuff with schools. And I'm sure Linda has lots of ideas about education stuff too. Yeah, so looking forward to talking some more.
Thanks, Daniel.
Good morning, everyone. Lucas from Winnipeg. Yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to do some deep thinking about what we can do for the planet and how we can use business tools to make that happen in a quickly and in a way that's scalable. So very happy to be part of the conversation.
Thanks, Lucas. Maya?
Okay, so my name's Maya, formerly known as Rajan's sister. Just kidding. Ha ha ha. I was born into this family, and so I'm participating in this way, and it's pretty exciting.
Thanks, Maya. Just going down the list here. Treva, can you unmute yourself and say hi?
Hi. I'm glad to be a part of this. I'm looking forward to hearing about the other possibilities coming from Sean and being informed so that we can carry on preserving these natural resources that we have. The earth, the grass, the critters, the trees. Thank you.
Thanks. Linda?
Linda, you need to unmute yourself.
I just did.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah. I'm grateful to be part of this because, of course, we're feeling the shift. And for me, that means we're moving into a new world and there'll be new opportunities for a more equitable, just, and healthy economy. My problem is that I don't have any language, business language, and I don't have really a vision of business structures. And from having listened to Sean before, I'm here with my pen ready to pick up language and a vision.
Awesome. Thanks, Linda. Kaz?
Hey, everyone. I'm working with Raj and the team at NAWO on a few interesting projects, including the Sunrise Farm Cooperative Project and a food sovereignty project on the nations of Musqueam. And I also run a social enterprise and soon-to-be worker-owned cooperative in Edmonton called Spruce Permaculture, and we deliver food producing ecological landscapes for clients around the city. So very focused on food production and social justice, all that kind of thing. So I'm interested to pick up some interesting knowledge here and share with all of you. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Thanks, guys. Nicholas, I'm seeing for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to meet you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I've had issues with the mic, so I'm just checking. Yeah, so my, I guess, background is in accounting and farming, so I have a bit of both. My wife and I have been quite extensively, I guess, looking into cooperatives, and in particular agricultural cooperatives the last, I'll say, about 4 years. We were going to go on a big tour for a year and go exploring, and then we ended up having twins, and that kind of put that to the kibosh. But yes, we are still very interested in getting involved in co-ops and helping establish them. And I think it's a great opportunity to get more people educated about the food systems and just make it more available to people that wouldn't otherwise have the large capital that's typically involved with these operations.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Katie. Hi, Katie.
Hi, my name is Katie. I just heard about this conference from Kaz, and I own a gardening business in Edmonton, and so I've always wanted to have a farm. It's kind of been a dream of mine. So I'm just looking to yeah, learn whatever I can from this conference, and just see if I can somehow incorporate it into my current business model. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Alex, are you there?
Yes. Hello. Sorry, I'll start my video. My here we go. My internet's not always so great, so I don't always have the video on. But hi, I'm Alex. I work for an organization called Young Agrarians, and our mission is basically to help young people become successful farmers. And there's a lot of people within our network that are or have a very strong sense of ecological justice and social justice. And so farming is not just growing food, it's growing food in a way that sustains people and communities and the environment. And so, yeah, I'm just curious to learn more about social enterprises.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Celine, are you able to, I'll see if I can unmute your phone from here. No, I think you have to do it. Well, there we go.
I am mute. Can you see me?
Yeah, great.
I'm Celine, and I've been with this gathering since the beginning. Fascinates me. It's truly what I believe in, caring for the earth in a responsible and sustainable way. And hi, everyone. And of course, prayer is a big part of my contribution, if you want to see it that way. Bye.
Thank you, Celine. Brenda Bomer. We see you, but we see you're joined us, but we can't hear you.
Nor see you.
Yeah, your video's not on either. Maybe come back to Brenda. Keep trying. Lily?
Good morning, everybody. There's actually two of us sitting here. Caroline and yeah, I'm Lily. I'm working also with Young Agrarians, like Alex. I'm the Peace Country coordinator for this region. And so Alex and I work on the same mission, getting young people out on the land, producing food. And Caro was actually gonna drive down
To Camrose, yeah. I just heard about your conference or workshop through Jason, and I'm just interested to hear something about what is the topic actually? No, business tool and farm financing. Yeah.
We met you, Rajan, at the Organic Alberta conference at the very end, and you were telling us about social enterprises.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
Glad to have you on board.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So there's a couple phone numbers who phoned in, so I don't know who those folks are. I'll maybe unmute them. If you're joining us via phone, say hi.
So hi, I'm Ed, and it's just a pleasure to be part of this. And I really identify with Kaz and the young people like him. I believe it was Katie that spoke earlier. I think that getting this kind of operation going and hearing what Sean has to say to facilitate getting the food from the land out into the city is really important. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Donna Marie, are you there?
This is Jason. I can go ahead.
Oh, hey, Jason.
Hi. So yeah, my name is Jason, and I was a young agrarian. I am currently putting together a farming business plan, and I'm definitely considering and thinking, how can I turn this into a social enterprise if that's possible? And yeah, through access to land, access to equipment, I'm rearing to go. I'm making some connections, but there's definitely lots of obstacles. So I'm looking for tips and direction. And I am calling from Jasper, Alberta today. And so yeah, I'll be on the phone, but I'll be maybe a bit quiet most of the time. But thank you for this, and I look forward to hearing about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, is Mary, can you hear us, Mary? Or Donna Marie? I was corresponding with Donna Marie this morning.
I should say, maybe for those who are on the phone, you may have muted yourself by just a regular phone mute, but also the program automatically mutes you. And to unmute yourself, you have to push *6.
*6. Donna Marie, you can always also just text me via my cell phone if you want to send a message to the group. Yeah, thanks everyone. Quite a diverse group of folks. I'll turn it over to you and Sean and Lucas and Fiona, and you can guide us through the next steps.
Hey, wonderful. Good morning, everyone. I do have some slides that I'm going to show. If you're on the phone, do you want to just tell us what your email address is? And Lucas, if you could, I've sent you the link to the slides. If you could email it out, would be good. Does anybody on the phone want to download the slides if you're also near a computer?
So, hello, can you hear me?
Good morning, Ed.
So it's hello from Ed at live.ca. Thank you.
Great. Otherwise,
email me the slides, and I've got most of the folks' email addresses. We also have a live stream on YouTube for other folks.
Can I do that from my phone, Raj?
Yep.
So do I just tell you my email address or what?
Yeah, I'll send it around to everyone's email. I think, except for maybe Katie and Lily, I have everyone's email addresses.
Okay, thank you, Raj.
Oh yeah, so we want to. Yeah, well, good morning, everyone. Been looking forward to chatting with you guys today. It's a very exciting, pardon the pun, field that we're collectively talking about today. Lucas and I have been involved with social enterprise now for some time. I guess 2006. And Lucas, actually, I sent you the slides. Would you mind pulling it up and sharing the screen?
Yeah, sounds good.
So I think that'd be easier for me. So we're all learning this whole Zoom system. Some of us have used it before, but not extensively. And I think we're all realizing it's going to be something that is very prominent in our lives here going forward. I wanted to start out with a story. Lucas and I started a nonprofit called Build, B-U-I-L-D.
Sorry, Sean, I'm just going to interrupt.
Yeah.
So for me you have to stop sharing your screen.
Oh. Okay, sorry, everybody. We'll get going here right away. Well, in that case, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just do it from this end then, Lucas.
Okay.
Sorry. So Lucas and I started a nonprofit 2006 called Build, B-U-I-L-D, and the idea at the time was to insulate low-income housing. We were sending too much money to Alberta. Natural gas prices had spiked, and what happened was we decided to, working with a lot of folks in the inner city in Winnipeg, to have a double win and hire people with barriers to employment. And at the time, the idea of a nonprofit just meant for me that we would access funding. And nonprofit and funding, those two things go together for us. And what happened was remarkable. We had an astonishing number of people that were wanting to work at Build because they knew we would hire them because they had barriers to employment, because they had criminal records, no driver's licenses, no work experience, and so on. And then something remarkable happened, which will happen with you folks as well. And so I'm telling a story that happened in Winnipeg's inner city, but I think it's something that's happening all over the world. And Lucas and I were driving by a public housing complex, so Manitoba Housing in the inner city in Winnipeg. And we saw that Manitoba Housing had been hiring a contractor to do a lot of work there, but we were frustrated that we couldn't get government to give us more funding. And so we're looking at this government contractor, this contractor that government had hired, and why did government hire that contractor and not hire us? And I actually asked Lucas that question in the car, and he went kind of quiet for a minute, and he said, well, I think they're hiring the contractor because we're a nonprofit, a funded nonprofit. And so I asked Lucas, said, well, how the heck do we become a contractor? Because that's clearly the game we need to be in. And that was the day that Build kind of started to transition from being a nonprofit that was funded to being more entrepreneurial. And it led us on one heck of a journey that has connected us with you. And I think that's something that's quite interesting. Now, that's brilliant. I've got the wrong slide deck up. Hang on a sec.
Oh, and Sean, can you email me the slide
I'm on it, Raj.
Okay, awesome.
So what transpired as we started as a nonprofit, kind of responding with our hearts to an environmental and energy poverty issue, was this road to around entrepreneurialism. And this guy's name is Muhammad Yunus. You may have heard of him before. He's written many books. He's the founder in Bangladesh of the microcredit system there. And he just found that the banks were not getting money into the hands of young women who were wanting to be entrepreneurs, and left them vulnerable to loan sharks and getting them kind of caught up in high interest payments. And he just kind of took it upon himself, was like, well, I'll take some money out of my pocket, I'll loan these women some money, and I'll ask them to pay me back. And the banks wouldn't do it because they thought it was too risky. But this microcredit system has spread really all around the world, and it's got like a 96% payback rate. And I love this quote that he has of, well, if you've got a problem, create a social business. And I think that the problem that we're connecting on this morning is how do we change the food landscape, and how do we create something that is replicable so that we can take advantage of what's going to happen here in the next 10 years, which, as Raja said, is a massive transfer in ownership of land across the prairies. And the solutions may not be what you think they are, or what I might think they are, as we kind of connect beginning today. That's certainly something that Lucas and I have been surprised at as we've gone along, is that the ideas that we had in the beginning were just part of the step that has led us to where we are now. So I wanted to talk a bit about this entrepreneurial process, and I want to give you a different context, and we're going to bring it back to agriculture on the prairies. But I first want to just take a minute and just to describe to you what this entrepreneurialism, social entrepreneurialism, looks like in a different context. So note the name of this First Nation, Garden Hill First Nation, at 700 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg. It's a fly-in community. This is not your context. I'm just simply describing something that is very profound that I think you can relate to. What we're used to seeing in places like Garden Hill, and we'll make your own chart for Camrose, Edmonton, Alberta, the prairies when it comes to agriculture. But what we're used to seeing at Garden Hill First Nation is through a lens of poverty. So what we see, there's high food prices. There's a monopoly food retailer in Garden Hill that sells mostly unhealthy food. Up until recently, the northern store is on an island. There's a massive number of people with diabetes. In fact, 4 out of 5 First Nations kids will have diabetes at some point in their lifetime, which is astronomical. The place is called Garden Hill First Nation, and clearly it's had a strong, proud history of local food production, which is common everywhere. But it's not there now, that capacity for local food production. Huge growing local populations, which governments are very concerned about because it just increases the costs in many different ways and exacerbates problems. And a lot of people say, well, why don't they just move? Why don't they just move to the city? Like somehow the north end of Winnipeg isn't impacted by colonialism. And that would solve all problems. The people thinking it's a problem of location rather than colonial impact. And then massive unemployment rates. Now, some of you will have heard of Jane Jacobs. I'm a huge fan of hers. She's a legend in my mind that kind of described how how we look at our cities. And she was a one that originally said, you know, maybe we should design our cities for people rather than cars. Maybe we should design neighborhoods that are very unique and that connect people to each other. And people said, "Oh, crazy old lady. Why would we pay? She doesn't know what she's talking about." Well, now urban design courses are completely based around about what she said many years ago. She also said something extremely profound that impacts our conversation today. She said, "Poverty has no causes." And when I first heard that, I thought, oh, Jane, you and I are going to have to break up, because nothing about what that statement says is true, because we've learned poverty has causes. We've got it drilled into our heads. And so we got to get at the root causes of poverty. And Jane says, no, poverty is, if you think of it, darkness is the absence of light. Cold is the absence of heat, and poverty is nothing more than the absence of prosperity. And so through that statement, I think she begins to encourage us to not look through things from the lens of poverty. And what that means in your context is like, you know, massive corporate control of agriculture. 75% of healthcare expenditures are now on diseases where diet is a main risk factor, and total control or large control of corporate control over land. And as I've heard Raj say, that what's coming is the biggest land transfer since the treaties, which is remarkable. Those are kind of looking at things through a lens of poverty. But let's say we take Jane Jacobs' advice for a minute and say, well, let's look at things from a prosperity perspective. Now let's see, we've got 14 or 15 people on the call today in the discussion. Let's just say for a minute, okay, Jane, we're going to form a business. There's a 14-member board of this business. We're going to operate this social enterprise, and we are going to sell healthy food. We're going to grow healthy food. We're going to harvest healthy food. We're going to fish and hunt, all of these things. And if we look at it from a perspective of a business, what does high food prices mean for us? Well, from a consumer's perspective, it's terrible. But from the perspective of a business, is like, wow, that's a great margin for profit. We would actually want to do business in a place where we can make some surplus. Now, in a place like Garden Hill First Nation, and I recognize this is not your context, but there's one monopoly food retailer there. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for us? For our board, of a 14-person board that's running this business, well, that's absolutely fantastic. We've only got one competitor that we've got to worry about. No, the food is very inconvenient. People have to go onto off the reserve onto an island where the northern store is located. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for our business? Wow, that's fantastic for us. It's a competitive. We've got a competitive advantage over the competition. We can actually locate our business as people are going down onto the docks to take a boat across to go shopping, where it's much more convenient. Massive diabetes rates. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for us? Wow, yet another thing that's absolutely fantastic. The customer is going to be very interested in the healthy food that we have to sell. So here we are already, 4 very negative things. When we look at it through a lens of prosperity, we can begin to be very excited. These are all very great things for our business. Now, Garden Hill used to be food self-sufficient, and people are remembering, it's like, well, wait a minute. We used to be able to provide all of our food. The elders at Garden Hill are able to say where all the gardens used to be, all the root cellars, and realizing that, you know, if we want fish, we don't have to buy subsidized salmon at the northern store. we can catch and sell fish ourselves. 4,400 people, government looks at that like a hugely negative thing, but for us, wow, this is amazing. It's a huge market for good food. And 85% unemployment rates, a negative thing through the lens of poverty, but from a prosperity prosperity lens, it's a ready and willing pool of labor. And I just love how Jane Jacobs has us encouraging looking at not the poverty, but the prosperity angle. And what Lucas and I like to call this is the upside of down. When we begin to look at things that are very negative, but be able to see the opportunity in them. And I think that that's the entrepreneurial flip. And I think it's quite obvious that we're not going to be able to compete head to head with the industrial food system on prices for food for one simple reason, and that is that they are heavily subsidized in terms of money that goes into their coffers, but also they don't have to pay for the externalities of what it is that they're selling. In Winnipeg here, we've got huge phosphorus levels in Lake Winnipeg. We have rural depopulation. 75% of healthcare expenditures are on diseases where diet is a main risk factor. There's all these huge costs that are borne by the public system and taxpayers cleaning up the mess of the corporate system. And so what we have to do is to begin to look at food differently and what it is that food does. So here's a completely different context, also on a First Nation. This is a question I would ask you to see if you're getting the entrepreneurial opportunities that are present in front of us. So this picture I took at the Northlands Dene-Sulin First Nation. It's way in the northwest corner of Manitoba, and we created a system 50 or 60 years ago to haul diesel fuel up there on winter roads. The diesel fuel's probably from Alberta or from Texas, and it's toxic. It is super expensive to heat homes and to power homes with electricity, and it creates no employment locally. The diesel fuel leaks, which causes contamination. And we know that in Northlands Dene-Sulin First Nation that they import 2 million liters of this diesel fuel on an annual basis. So if Jane Jacobs were here, I think she would ask, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, looking at it from an entrepreneurial lens, that 2 million liters of imported toxic, non-job creating diesel fuel causing carbon spewing into the atmosphere, super exciting. It's a potential market for $36 million of renewable energy in the next 10 years. We're going to bring this back to your context here shortly. The main point that we're making is that there are two kinds of money. There's funding, which nonprofits are generally attracted to, and then there's all the rest of the money that's in the economy. Now, some of you are already saying, yeah, we get this, Sean. We're already selling healthy food. Now, this is particularly profound in Alberta, I find, is that people say, oh, we're going to do this without government. We don't want to be dependent on government. But what it is, the healthy food that you're already selling is a gift to government. It is saying to government, we know this healthy food is reducing diabetes. We want you to have that financial benefit for free. And so 2 points, I think, on this slide. One is that we've got to start thinking well, they both center around the same point, is that we've got to start thinking more entrepreneurially. And the first means that let's move away from funding. And the second piece is that let's make sure that all of the value of what it is we're doing is being captured financially. And I think that that's the whole movement that is unfolding internationally. It has a name. Some people call it social innovation. Social innovation is promoted by three different problem solvers, and I think that this is the movement. Is that we've got to make it easy for problem solvers. And who are they? Well, first of all, there's social entrepreneurs. There's the small farms and local food movement. And then there's social enterprises, and I think Sunrise Farms would fit into the small farms and local food movement. May also be a bit in the social entrepreneur or social enterprise end, and I'll explain the differences in these. Those of you that are in the food sector already, I mean, some of these things can overlap a bit. So this is a woman whom is a social entrepreneur. Fiona and I call her our mother-in-law. And she's a social entrepreneur because this is a for-profit venture that she started called Mazanate Press, and she has 14 different books that she sells. So it's an entrepreneurial solution to addressing a problem, which is the lack of language materials in the marketplace. And she's decided to create a business to solve that problem. And we might also say Elon Musk is a social entrepreneur, and that he's using business tools to electrify the transportation sector. Interestingly, Elon Musk has a lot of Tesla's engineering plans on the internet. He actually wants other companies to be electrifying their products, because this is what social entrepreneurs want to do. It's very much about transformation. You're very familiar with the small farm movement. I don't think it's really about the farms being local. We don't hear much about the 100-mile diet anymore, because I don't think it matters so much where the food is grown. It matters how the food is being grown. And it just lends itself so well to local solutions, but it's really not the local that's adding the value. It's how the food is being grown. I mean, you won't be surprised to hear that, you know, by many estimates, over 80% of the cost in corporate agriculture is actually fossil fuels. And look at all the problems that these fossil fuels are creating. Things like phosphorus in Lake Winnipeg, as we said. And the small farm movement just goes about doing things in such a different way. But usually when they're selling their product, all of these benefits become financial gifts to usually sectors of government or to consumers. So the trick here is to capture these benefits. So look, for example, the processed food that consumers normally buy. Keeping in mind, 75% of healthcare expenditures are now on diseases where diet is a main risk factor. Well, small farms are not selling processed food. They're usually salt and sugar is not part of the product. Global agriculture is selling internationally. Small farms sell locally. Corporate agriculture, huge fossil fuel usage. And the small farm movement, as the fertilizer is usually sourced on farm. The chicken manure is used on the vegetable acreage. Corporate agriculture brings the food to the livestock. Distillers' dried grains, for example, being brought to huge feedlots. Small farms, the livestock is taken to the food. The cattle is moved. The the chicken tractors are moved every other day, for example. So it's much less intensive. Corporate agriculture is causing massive rural depopulation, and small farm movement offers an opportunity to bring people back onto the land. Corporate agriculture is about soil depletion. Small farms are about soil building. And what's really important for us here, and I think you've experienced some flooding recently as well, when these farmers are wanting to get rid of their water in the spring as quickly as possible so they can get out on the land. Well, we've got a lot more water coming down the Assiniboine and Red River all at once, which causes massive flooding. And it's billions of dollars in flood mitigation that's caused as a result of that. And we all know these things, but the trick is, well, how can our movement capture some of these benefits? When it comes to social enterprises, generally social enterprises are nonprofit. We're motivated by social and environmental well-being. None of that changes in this new paradigm, but we're using market tools, and market tools means being more entrepreneurial. It means capturing these very lucrative benefits. And you can read a lot more about these tools in the beautiful bailout that we've written, and is available on our website at encompass.coop. But and we'll get into it a bit today, but we won't have time to delve into what all of these market tools are. I just really wanted to focus today on being more entrepreneurial. So one more crack at this entrepreneurial story then. So this is Fiona. As a few years ago, we're in a town, Galashiels, I guess it was, right? Yeah. In southern Scotland, and we were looking up my family's history. My mom had found this old birth certificate of a great aunt of mine, and we noticed on the website that there was a family border history center. So we tracked it down in Galashiels, and I love this story because I actually like to tell it. I like to tell it twice. The second time it sounds completely different to people. So I'll go through this story once, tell you what happened, and then when I'm finished, I think I'll tell it again, and it'll sound different. So we find them on the internet, and we discovered they're kind of down this back lane, which was kind of seedy. And we noticed it had very limited business hours. And we went in and found this lovely gal in the upper right-hand corner, and she was a volunteer. We had to wait in line for a while with all these Americans, and Australians, and Canadians that had done the same thing as us, like spent a lot of money to fly all the way to the UK. And one of the things we wanted to do there was to look into our family history. And the first thing this gal did is to apologize. Say, we're really sorry that you had to wait. We're all volunteers here, and we've got some government funding applications in, and we're hoping they're successful. And if that's the case, we might be able to do something about these lineups that we're experiencing. And she had this incredible value to what it is that she did. And you can see in the upper left-hand corner of this picture is all of these local information that they had about where people lived, and all kinds of information, census documents, none of it digitized. And it was just all there, that right at their fingertips. And so within a very short order, she was able to tell us the name of the farm where my ancestors lived, and how many acres they had, and what they had for crops, and so on. And we got very excited. And it's like, wow, this is great. can you, is it possible for you to rent to us, or find somebody that we could hire to take us out to this farm? And the volunteer said, oh, no, that we don't do that, but you can go downtown and you can rent a car. Here's the name of the company where you can go and rent a car. And I said, well, there's nobody that can take us out because we're not interested in driving. We're just not comfortable with driving on the other side of the road. And she said, no, sorry, that's not something that we do. And it's like, oh, okay, well, do you have a map that we could buy? And she said, no, but there's a place downtown where you could go and you could buy a map. You could buy a map there. Here's the name of the store that has a map. And it's like, well, what about souvenirs? Do you have any like local souvenirs that we could buy? I said, no, we don't sell souvenirs either, but here's another place you could go, another business you could go downtown. And it was all these examples of attempts by us to give them money through the entrepreneurial process, but they were just thinking too much, not entrepreneurially, and kind of stuck in the ways that nonprofits are trained to kind of function. And so here's what happened. We went and downtown, we paid 20 pounds for a map at one multinational business called, I forget the name, Smith Books, I think it was, yeah. And then we went and bought some souvenirs from the local area. We probably unloaded another 40 pounds there. And then we went over to rent the car. And this is the car on the right-hand side. And I said to Fee, I'm not driving on the wrong side of the road. Like, it's just, I know I can't do it. And she says, I think I can do it. So it came time, and I said, okay, we need your driver's license, Fiona. And she had this blank look on her face and said, well, I left it back at the bed and breakfast. And we didn't have time to go back at that point in time. So I very reluctantly got my wallet out and took out my driver's license, and with a very bad feeling, put it on the countertop. And at this point, I'm actually angry at the volunteers at the Family Border History Center, because none of this is necessary. Like, we've had the money to fly over to Scotland. Why the heck couldn't we give them money for this service? Like, imagine the number of seniors with tons of local information and a car and a driver's license that would love to take Canadians and show them around the countryside and take them to exactly where their farm was. Well, 5 minutes later, we took off in the car, and I start hitting the curb regularly. And Fee says to me, stop hitting the curb. And I'm saying, I'm not trying to hit the curb. And then I hit the curb really hard. And then I could hear this hiss, and that's the flat tire. And at this point, I'm really angry. Now it's a whole 5 blocks away from where we started from. That's how far I made it, 5 blocks. And at this point, I'm really conjuring up some angry sentiments towards this entrepreneurial nonprofit. So I think that this is the problem, really, that nonprofits have all these amazing, lucrative solutions that can be offered, but we either give these things away, and in fact, in the end, all we paid for at the Family Border History Center was photocopying. That's the only way we could unload money there. And so this is the process. Now, interestingly, this is a 1 block away. This is what 1 block away from the Family Border History Center in Galashiels, Scotland. All of the color that you're seeing there, they're all social enterprises. They're nonprofit businesses that are offering services. You've got cooperative travel, you got funeral care, There's secondhand stores, all kinds of different things that are happening right there. And really, it's this idea of, yeah, we're gonna do things for the right reasons, but we're gonna be more entrepreneurial, and we're gonna capture some of these benefits. Okay, now we're gonna get back to the food piece here a bit, and then we're really gonna get into your own context. Here's where Garden Hill First Nation is. One of the social enterprises that Lucas and I have been involved with is called Aki Foods. In Edmonton, Camrose, you might say ASCII. Aki is a Ojibwe pronunciation of a word that means earth foods. And this is how our entrepreneurial process started. When we started looking around the First Nation and talking to elders, and we saw this massive diabetes problem. They have a dialysis unit at Garden Hill First Nation. It costs $1 million a bed to create the bed so that severe diabetics can receive treatment in the community. $100,000 a year for each patient to receive treatment in that bed. There are 38 people on the wait list for dialysis treatment in Garden Hill alone. Massive public expenditures on diabetes resulting from corporate agriculture, resulting from outside monopoly food retailers. So we know that entrepreneurial solutions are what's going to fix this problem. So we started a healthy food market, and this is how we started it. First of all, this is in the TV station. You can see the TV on the left-hand side, and we borrowed some tables from the band office, and we brought up a bunch of food, and you can see there's a white sheet of paper there with Sharpie with the prices printed on, and boom, the food sold fast, like in 15-20 minutes. As soon as some of our coworkers went on the TV station to say in Ojibwe what was being sold and what the prices were, that it was remarkable. We also started a farm, a 13-acre farm, and so this is 2013, so it's 5 or 6 years ago, and we bought 1,000 chickens at a time, and we're also, the kids are growing seedlings in the classroom, so we're engaging the local education system and integrating some of these activities into the curriculum. And at Garden Hill, the kids have their own plots, and which is great because they come in the summertime to see all of the how their plots are doing and to work on their plots. We started selling imported food through a healthy food box, about $300. It's much cheaper than the monopoly retailer that's there, and that's been very interesting for us as well. Now, one of the things that I wanted to say about all of this is that what this has led us to is actually moving towards selling what healthy food does. And Aki Foods is now selling diabetes reduction. And you can read much more about that in the beautiful bailout. But I'm gonna touch on that very briefly. We don't have time to get into all of the ins and outs of how to do that. I just simply wanted to make the point that Sunrise Farms is going to be successful. That model will be replicable across the prairies if we are able to capture the value of what it is that we're doing. And instead of competing carrot to carrot, unsubsidized carrot versus subsidized carrot, to think of things more creatively. And Lucas and I are going to get into that very briefly. But at the Garden Hill First Nation, we began to make the point that 4 out of 5 First Nations kids will have diabetes at some point in their lifetimes. And what that means is that right now there's 4 First Nations in that area that are spending, the government is spending $50 million in treating that one diet-related disease. And at the same time, governments will acknowledge that in very short order, that 50 million will turn into $100 million a year in costs of treating this one diet-related disease. And so why the increase in costs? Obviously, the incidence is increasing, but also the populations are increasing. And so this is one of the examples of value added that we can capture out of the farm, which is to say to governments, well, you've got a choice. And what we can do for you is to offer you significant cost savings. And you can actually use the farm as to creatively offer to government and to sell to government diabetes reduction. And what that looks like in that context, and we'll quickly come back to your own context, is beginning to ask government of some different questions. So we can say, well, this picture is of that dialysis station in the Garden Hill First Nation, and government went out and contracted with a company to come in and build it. It was a very outcomes-oriented relationship that they had. It wasn't funding that was making this happen. It was government saying to an entrepreneur, a private company, say, can you come in and deliver this outcome for us? And we're saying to government, well, you're buying the diabetes management costs from the private sector. Can you also buy health and social outcomes from a nonprofit? And we're finding that their answer is yes. And you can read about exactly how this happens in the Beautiful Bailout. It sounds like I'm trying to sell books, but what I'm just wanting to just plant this quick seed of the word I'm trying to think of, the value proposition, the treasure chest that Sunrise Farms is sitting on. And this is an image from page 70 in the Beautiful Bailout that kind of describes the relationship. And there's us on the top, the community. It can be Aki Foods, it can be Sunrise Farms. And what happens is we get money from these impact investors that can be foundations, it can be First Nations. And what we do, one of the things I think that we can do with this farm is to lower diabetes rates, and very holistically, and with government purchasing. Now, I don't expect you to understand how that all works, because that's like a half-day workshop just all in of its own. I just simply wanted to plant the seed that there are many ways of capturing these values, and Lucas and I are gonna come back to this right away. Okay, now there's a couple other things. I just wanted to simply mention that with this social innovation movement, there are some people that have come and stepped up, some institutions which we weren't aware of before, that are really wanting to partner with us. And one of them is the foundations. Now, I know there's an Edmonton Foundation. I can tell you that the Aki Foods right now, we're in the process of closing a $25 million deal to reduce diabetes reduction. And we have customers that are the federal government and the government of Manitoba that are buying those outcomes. Now, where do we get the money from in the first place? The money is coming from foundations, such as the Edmonton Foundation. Our understanding is the Edmonton Foundation is involved with the Aki Foods deal. We can talk much more about how all that works. That's not the point of mentioning this now. I'm just simply wanting to say these foundations are ready to be engaged. This gal on the right is Joan Lawson, and she's from the Lawson Foundation. This is her in the farm at the Garden Hill First Nation, the Lawson Foundation is making a sizable investment in the Aki Foods deal. I think we can engage foundations in a very creative manner in many ways with Sunrise Farms. Think about this for a minute. There are 10,000 foundations in Canada. The Edmonton Foundation is only one. They have $73 billion in assets. And those assets are invested in things like the oil sands. They're invested in things like the Northern Store. They're invested in things like Kentucky Fried Chicken and so on and so forth. They are keen to see their investments transferred into business models that actually further their mandates. The Lawson Foundation, they're most interested in diabetes reduction. Joan's family has a lot of diabetes, a lot of folks that have suffered with diabetes. And so the main focus of the Lawson Foundation is in fact reducing diabetes. And they are also a major investor in the work that we're trying to do. So I wanted to plant that seed. I also wanted to plant this seed, which is something that is an example of something else that can be done on a farm in Alberta in your own context. Now, this is Fiona and I have stayed here before. It's Sawachi's Lodge. It is owned by a nonprofit called the Vancouver Urban Native Housing Association in the downtown east side in Vancouver. Now, what does this have anything to do with Sunrise Farms in Sunrise Co-op in Alberta? Well, they said, you know, as a nonprofit, we can offer hospitality, but we're not going to go head to head with the big hotels and say, well, you know, we can do hospitality the way you do it, and we can do it better than you. That's not what they decided to do. They had a very creative model where there's about 60 rooms, and they offered 30 of them to Indigenous artists and 30 marketed on Expedia. And the revenues from the Expedia marketed hotel rooms were being used to lower the rents for the Indigenous artists. And they also said to the artists, well, we'll give you, you know, a cheaper rate on staying here, but we'd like you to put your artwork up for sale in the gallery on the main level, and also in the hotel rooms. So when people come and stay with us, they can see your artwork displayed in their rooms. You just simply can't get that experience in a normal hotel. And wouldn't it be interesting to begin to offer hospitality in a very unique environment on the farm, and to be able to generate revenues because people want to be maybe staying in a yurt on the farm and being able to have a very unique vacation experience, or being able to stop on their way from one place to another and say, wow, like this is a place that is unlike any other. And so you begin to capture the value of being a nonprofit in the marketplace. And so those, I've just simply wanted to plant some seeds about entrepreneurialism, and we're going to talk a bit more about it, about looking at things differently. Lucas and I have identified 9 different ways. It's not just our ideas, it's just in talking to Raj and Fiona and others over the last 6 to 12 months. People have got really excited about your project and began to brainstorm all these different ways that we could capture revenue in the marketplace and to sell our valued, our lucrative outcomes in the marketplace. And that, I think, is the road and the path to creating a farm that is going to be having a revenue model that is replicable across the prairies when we begin to demonstrate how we can capture some of these values. And so before we get into these ideas that that we've written down over the last 6 to 12 months, I wanted to just take a minute and say that that might be a fair bit. Are there any questions or comments that people would have on the on what it is that that I've shared so far here today? Remember, you've got to unmute yourself, or you can also send the question in the chat and we can pick it up that way. Raj, do you want to maybe make a comment?
I think I'm unmuted now.
Yep.
I just find it always quite inspiring, the term, the upside of down. It's neat how you flipped all these problems on their head. I think I'm still in the brainstorming phase of exactly how we can use this conundrum, which is essentially we've shut out the next generation from high price land. And what's the trigger to flip that on its head and make that a solution? And maybe it's maybe one of the solutions is that we bring a bunch of people back to the land. And so it's not just this one single agent who's trying to purchase, you know, out of reach land, but you know, it's a bunch of people who have to come together. And I think that's the heart of the cooperative. But I think I'm also keen in hearing other folks' ideas and how we can synergize these entrepreneurial ideas. Two of the things I wrote down kind of towards the end of your talk was, one is mental health. It's such a huge conundrum for so many people. And certainly walking on Donna Marie's land, you feel the beauty and the spirit and just a sense of peace. And I think that places like this can afford. The other is physical health, which is so connected to mental health. There's so many benefits from physically just breathing in clean air. I mean, so many places that are so polluted, and you know they're exporting oxygen from Banff around the world and selling that. Well, you know, we have beautiful skies out here in Alberta and across the prairies. So yeah, it's I think the next stage I'm looking forward to is brainstorming along with other folks about how we can start facilitating people's access to these basic physical health, mental health, wonderful food. Yeah, I'm interested to hear other comments, young agrarians and others who've been thinking about this for a while.
We're looking forward to brainstorming as well, and starting to give some ideas of what this value capture looks like. Any other, so great comment, Raj. Any other questions or comments before we kind of enter into that brainstorming exercise?
This is Celine, and we have thought of education for children, like showed hands-on land, growing something, and that sort of thing. Hey.
It's a bit hard to hear you, Celine. Yeah, you may have to change some of the settings on your microphone.
Or maybe just go to the chat and send a question or comment and pick it up from there.
And if you have trouble using the chat, Celine, just me on my phone.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Just send Raj a text or phone them.
Oh, can you hear me better now?
A little.
Well, I was on speaker, I guess. I have it on Bluetooth speaker or conference. So I wasn't holding the phone close enough. So is this better?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, what we had talked about also was in the education, was having children come out on in the earth and experiencing, like you showed previously, growing their own vegetables or flowers or herbs. So that's what I have to say for now.
I heard you say children's experience and having them come out to the farm and learn to grow things. Was that right, Celine?
Yes.
Perfect.
Well, we're gonna pick up on that, and we're gonna talk about that, how we generate revenue by offering that. Any other questions or comments before we get into the laying out some ideas?
I think we're all anxious to hear the ideas, John.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in here. What we're talking about is conceptually like a really large problem, right? And how do we transition very expensive land to a new generation? And that's conceptually like a really like big problem to deal with. And so we find that it's important to start at the beginning and not, because at the end of this session today, I'm not sure that we're going to have a solution to how to fix transferring land in between generations and keeping it out of the hands of industrial agriculture. Right, we're probably not going to fix that today, but we need to. But what we can do is we can start. Right, so the important part is to think about how we would start at the beginning of that journey, and how do we take kind of the first steps to get our feet wet, to come up with some ideas about how just to start. And not concern yourself with how do we come up with a game-changing, fully formed idea, right? So it's important just to start.
Great comment, Lucas. Anyone else before we get going? Okay, so Lucas, can you put the whiteboard on? And I'm just going to check the chat while you're doing that. I did a stop share, so you should be able to do that. Thanks, people, also for the comments in the chat. Those are very helpful. Feel free to continue doing that.
Those of you who are on the phone or otherwise, Alex said so many great ideas, ! And Katie said thanks for that ! And then Nick writing lease to own or finance project or a way to get started with say only 20% down. Gives time to come up with the rest of the capital, and a lot of landowners are flexible on these arrangements.
Awesome. Okay, so I've written down some of these suggestions already. The first thing we're going to do is kind of make this a bit real. Depending on what land you buy, I understand that there's a property that kind of got you guys thinking about purchasing land, and that the purchase price of the property was 1.6 million. Is that right, Raj?
Yep.
So let's just call the purchase price $2 million. Now, if government came along and said, well, we like you guys, here's $2 million, that might buy you the farm, but it's a project. It's not really something that can be replicated across the prairies. And so I think what we're trying to do is to demonstrate using these tools of social innovation, these social entrepreneurial tools, to be able to generate revenue. And the great thing about using business skills is that you don't need $2 million. What you need is a good business plan that can attract investors, that can generate $200,000 a year in surplus. So what we're wanting to do is to come up with some ideas today of things that can generate surplus that would amount together to $200,000 or more per year. And the great thing about this is different from mono agriculture is that it's interesting is that as I grew up in this landscape dominated by industrial agriculture, we would say, are you a cattle farmer? Are you a wheat farmer? Like there's just one thing that farmers generally do, or that agriculture usually does. But in many ways, we want to do things the exact opposite. And so we don't have to come up with an exercise on this farm to generate $200,000 in profit a year. And if we did, as Raj says, we would have to rape the land in order to do that. We would have to bring in pesticides and synthetic fertilizers and big combines and international finance. And so what we might want to look at is coming up with 7 or 8 ideas that each generate on average between $25,000 and $50,000 a year in surplus. And so Raj has kicked it off by saying, well, let's do the opposite of corporate agriculture. Instead of having like one person on the farm, maybe we have a bunch. And so the one thing that we can throw up there as an idea is to say, well, let's take 20% of the acres. How many acres, Raj, was the farm that you were looking at?
640, so a section.
Okay, so 640 acres. So if we were to take 100 of those acres and in essence subdivide that land and say to young agrarians that are looking for land, is like, hey, we've got land. Are you interested in leasing it? You don't need any money down, but you can come. And one of the benefits of leasing is that we can, we've got one tractor that everybody can share. We've got, one barn that everybody can have access to. We've got one piece of equipment that can do fencing. We've got, one system for irrigation that can be shared, and so on and so forth. So when we look at, it's like, okay, is this something that we can make $25,000 or more on per year? Well, if we were to attract 5 of these farmers, and if they were signing leases of $5,000 to $10,000 a year each, that becomes an annual revenue stream of $25,000 to $50,000 a year. people kind of seeing that, and at $25,000 to $50,000 a year, that's a good step towards getting the $200,000 a year in revenue that we're going to need. And why do we need $200,000 a year in revenue? Is because we're going to get the financing from somewhere else. And this is what happens in the business community. They're going to attract investors. And part of the reason why I took the time to talk about foundations is that I think foundations would be extremely interested in looking at your business plan. And that they would be very interested in taking some of their endowment and making an investment in a socially, environmentally conscious business, such as Sunrise Co-op. So that can be one potential revenue stream. Now, if this is something that people are interested in, we would get a team together and say, okay, what would this look like? How do we market that this land is available? Who do we market to? What does a contract look like? What do these farmers need in order to get going? But let's call that, Lucas, idea number one. These aren't necessarily good ideas. These are just ideas that we collected over the last 6 months. So we're turning the lack of access to land for young agrarian farmers into a positive. Another idea that has already been mentioned today is Raj mentioned about mental health. Well, a lot of people that are struggling with their mental health do so at different severities. But what we do know is that a bed in the ward a mental health bed in the ward at a hospital is, I think it's about $1,600 a night. Is that correct, Lucas?
I believe that's correct, yeah.
So just think about that, $1,600 per night. So is there a discussion to be had with the regional health authority and say, look, would you be interested in freeing up some of those beds? And they're heavily constrained all across the country. And to begin to provide these mental health services, but instead of doing it in a sterile hospital, to actually do it on the land, and that we could offer, for example, tiny homes for people to live in while they're going through their healing process. And that involves a whole team of people to kind of pull together what that might look like. But my goodness, if it's $400 per night kind of a charge that the farm would get the health system to pay, and if you had 10 people at a time, that's $4,000 a night. And maybe some of those projections are a bit optimistic, but you can quickly see how you can make an arrangement with the health system to offer them a solution that is astronomically cheaper and better outcomes than what they're currently offering. So it feels to me like that's something that could be worth exploring, that could earn a surplus. So over and above our costs of $50,000 a year. It seems to me like that is something that is quite possible. And a whole that's a whole, you know, conversation as to how we would go about doing that. We're not going to get into that necessarily today. Also on the phone, somebody mentioned about children's education, and maybe Fee, can you comment a bit about some things that we've come across here in Manitoba that I think are very marketable to the education system?
Okay, well, I've been involved with some language camps, and my son, he's learned Ojibwe from his Ojibwe grandmother, who's a teacher, and she started some language camps in her First Nation, Laxwell First Nation, and we attended those. And then eventually there were some a little bit closer to home, and we went to language camps in Minnesota. And now there are some that are starting up in Manitoba, and a lot of First Nations are interested in them, and school divisions, and also universities and colleges wanting their more opportunities for their students to learn Indigenous languages, and, you know, other languages too, I'm sure, in a land-based setting. So like educators are really starting to get more interested in land-based education because it's so effective for all learning styles. And then with reconciliation as well, you know, teachers are interested in learning more about Indigenous history, culture, and environmental perspectives as well. And the whole like rediscovery camp. I don't know if you've heard of rediscovery camps, but at one point there used to be like many rediscovery camps in BC and Alberta and different countries as well. And they focus on the wisdom of elders, strength of cultural traditions, and the philosophy of respect and love for nature and each other. So really positive messages that I think especially youth nowadays are super interested in. Like I was really inspired by, like, you know, young people doing the climate strikes and climate justice stuff, and how they're very, very interested in what's happening in the Wet'suwet'en blockade, and the Indigenous respect for the land is kind of inspiring young people all over the world. So there might be some way of having like youth activist training, or some kind of camp that promotes reconciliation or environmental issues. And with the language camps, they got some funding from, they basically sold their services to Child and Family Services, because those agencies are really interested in their young children learning about their culture and language, and sometimes they're not with Indigenous families. So it's a way of also educating the foster families and the children about their culture and language. And the land-based learning is so effective. And, you know, as we know, a lot of those children are under a lot of stress and trauma if they're in care, and the land is very healing and an effective way of reaching the children. And, you know, many school divisions, colleges, and universities are also interested in that as well. and looking for places, you know, where you can get out of cities and have that type of experience. Yeah, and I just a side note, one way of being able to afford the land is maybe doing some kind of co-housing model that's more popular in Europe. And then you might get people with different needs, like maybe seniors or young families or young agrarians, or yeah, people interested in kind of sharing some resources, like maybe have small homes and then a common space where people can share like laundry and cooking, or, you know, share vehicles or whatever. And then it might be an affordable way to purchase the land. That's just another idea.
Okay, I wanted to pick up on both of these. So Lucas, that's perfect. Land-based cultural learning venue. So what Fee's saying is that learning on the land is just plain out better than what's happening now in many cases in the education system. And that's becoming recognized. And just look at language camps alone, the government of Canada announced a huge amount of money. That was a year or two ago, I think. So wouldn't that be interesting if Sunrise Farms were to say, you know, we've got tiny homes out here, and people can come and engage and learn their language in an immersion setting. So you can actually walk around and, you know, learn how to say, well, this is a farm that, you know, we're going to drive the tractor, like all of these ways of being able to immerse. And I think that there's going to be a lot of money available to do these kinds of things, and what an ideal setting to do that in. And then the other point that she's making is around co-housing. Well, could there be another 100 acres or even 10 acres set aside for trying to attract 10 families to come and live there? That, as Fee's saying, they could share resources, as for example, a car, and the lease payment that we would charge for the families to live there would include the home, would include, you know, access to a vehicle, and they may even we may even say, look, we would like, you know, 5 hours a week of working on the farm, helping with weeding and harvesting and so on and so forth. But if you charged each of the 10 families and you were able to make a surplus, like could we not see that there's $5,000 a year per family in surplus that might be available? Well, that's another $50,000 chunk of moving towards getting the $200,000 a year that we need to pay back to pay back the mortgage. So those are two excellent ideas. And Fee has another one too, which I also had on my list. Music festival.
Oh yeah. Well, the another idea is like a music do-it-yourself learning kind of festival. Like in Manitoba, there's a festival called Harvest Moon, and it was started by farmers wanting to sell their produce into the urban market, and kind of having a meeting of urban and rural people, and you know, having musicians, artists, and people do workshops, you know, and kind of do it yourself themes, but also, you know, could have like climate justice, you know, just trade, barter system, whatever is kind of interesting to people, talking about it like a, you know, this growing new philosophy of back to the land and respect for, you know, different justice ideas. So that could be a revenue source as well.
So, and I know, Raj, you've already had some kind of a music fundraising night?
Yeah, we had our first annual, we hope, Prairie Song fundraiser, led by Ryan Lindsay, a budding country music artist. This fall, we had like 150 people come. So yeah, we've always wanted to incorporate music, and Ryan's connection to the industry really proved helpful. And we had Ryan and three other singer-songwriters for a great evening that featured local food and local producers. So yeah, this, hopefully we're thinking this is the first step to something larger. The Harvest Moon Festival in Manitoba sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it's not a small undertaking. They can't actually, there's a rush for tickets. And, but if you, again, looking at this from an entrepreneurial perspective, if you were to attract even 200 people to it on an annual basis, and a lot of people would be tenting or bringing their campers. And if you were to clear from them $100 each, that's $20,000 in revenue right there on like one weekend. And it can also be done at harvest time, so that food from the farm can be sold, and urban people coming for that weekend experience could come knowing that they're getting a musical experience. As Fee said, do-it-yourself workshops are part of the value, but they can also come and take home with them 50 pounds of carrots and 20 pounds of honey and a side of beef that they might have ordered ahead of time, and can connect with customers that way. But that's an experience that you're not going to be able to have in the city. What's that?
Oh, I also wanted to add that out of that festival came the Harvest Moon food purchasing system online. So they coordinate maybe 10 or 15 different farms, and they put online what products they have to offer. And the clientele are a lot of the people that go to the festival. And so over, online, you can order what you want all throughout the year from these different farmers. So it's a good way to market the produce from the farms as well.
So I had a look at the chats and comments, and people are making some really good points, saying, zoning might be an issue. Absolutely, zoning might be an issue. These aren't showstoppers. They're kind of part of the exploratory process. We're going to keep, Raj, if there's something from the chats that needs to be spoken, I'll let you jump in on that, okay? As we kind of keep going through some of these ideas.
At this music, one time I was at a retreat in Edmonton, Providence, and we go for a walk to where we can see the music. And there are spots on top of the hill that overlook the river or the creek. So there were some musicians playing out in the open air, and this one said, "Oh, here's my sweet spot." So I don't know if that would be doable. Plus, there are camps, like music learning camps for children, stuff like that.
Raj, can you kind of summarize what was just said?
I'm not sure I quite heard. It was anyone who has a clear idea?
Sorry.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Do you want to text me? Is that Celine?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, yeah. Text me text me. It's really hard to make out what you're saying.
But they're good ideas.
Okay, how do I text you?
On my phone.
Oh, okay. Hey, I'll try.
Yeah, we're very interested, Celine, in what you've got to say. So when Raj gets that, he'll jump in with it.
Oh, good. Great.
Okay, here's another example. Lucas and I at Encompass Co-op, we fly a lot up until recently. And what that means for us is that we're spewing a lot of carbon into the atmosphere, and our co-op, we'd be very interested in buying from Sunrise Co-op carbon capture. And I've done a little bit of research looking into what that might look like. And so here's what I was able to find out. A 2-hour flight for one person is about a half a ton of greenhouse gas emissions per flight. So if we're flying from Winnipeg to Edmonton, it's a half a ton of emissions. And the government of Canada has already set a price for carbon at $50 per ton. And that would look like something like $25 to $30 of carbon per flight. And we would dearly like to be able to purchase these carbon reductions from a like-minded social enterprise such as Sunrise. Each tree planted can capture about 1 ton over its lifetime. And so each tree planted could be worth $50 in carbon emission, in carbon capture value. Each tree is worth $50 in carbon capture value. Now we think our family, which isn't just Encompass, but there's a few other social enterprises in Winnipeg, we took 80 flights last year, and some of that is bringing people from the Island Lake communities at Garden Hill into Winnipeg for meetings, but we paid for about 80 flights. Well, we are looking for somebody to plant 50 trees a year for us, and we would be willing to pay $2,500 annually to do that. So that's one company that isn't particularly big that would be, we're looking for, you know, $2,500, somebody to take $2,500 off our hands on an annual basis. So if we can find 10 companies that would buy into our carbon capture idea, then that would be $25,000 just there. If we can find 20 companies, and you know, wouldn't foundations be absolutely excited to contract with Sunrise to offset their carbon emissions? You'd have a very unique perspective on that market. What we would want in return is some independent verification that those trees have been planted on our behalf, and we would want to put your logo onto our website so that we can say Encompass Co-op has purchased carbon offsets from Sunrise Co-op in Alberta. And if you are interested in buying these carbon offsets, click here. And so we could also, with one logo, be advertising to our customers that we're carbon neutral, and at the same time advertising your services so that you can sell more planting of more trees. There's other ways, of course, of capturing carbon, which is done in naturally in the process of these poly farms. Now, also, what's very popular around Winnipeg is, at least in our provincial parks, they're in high demand, is people renting yurts, families renting yurts, and having a place to take their family in the summertime, maybe also in the winter if the yurts are insulated. But wouldn't it be interesting to put some yurts up on the farm, or some kind of interesting vacation options for people to come and stay? Yeah, Lucas, I've heard that term before. What does that mean, glamping?
It means it's glamour camping.
Ah.
Yeah, and essentially what it is like somebody sets stuff up for you, and it's for people from the city who don't have their own gear, right? They don't have a tent. Like it's people who don't camp to get into camping. It's kind of involved. But if you'd like to, if you don't have your own stuff, it's like kind of going to a hotel but camping.
Yeah, and I can imagine that, you know, every day the co-op could offer activities for the kids. Come for a tractor ride, or, you know, pet the animals on the farm. I don't even know what that would look like, but a bonfire at night, that type of thing.
It's for dads who don't want to struggle setting up a tent in front of their children. But they want to go they want to take their kids out and have like a campfire and, you know, see some stars, stuff like that.
Okay. Let's see here. Oh yes. To pick up on a point earlier about children's education, wouldn't it be interesting to have a relationship with local universities and offer 4-credit university courses? And I know Spirit of the Land, I think it would just be an extension of Spirit of the Land, or just continuing on with that, but actually being able to have courses at on the farm, land-based education, but being able to deliver that education and being able to charge for that. Okay, I've got one more, and we'll open it up for other ideas. The last one that I have on my list is to copy a successful social enterprise in Scotland called Highland Titles. And in Scotland, Highland Titles, what they're doing is selling 10 square feet of land in an area that's being set aside for conservation. The local community was very concerned that some land was going to be developed that they didn't want developed. They wanted it left natural. And so they used a business approach, which is to go and get an investment. They bought the land. I forget how many acres or hectares it is, but it's not an insignificant chunk of land. And then they went and sold 10 square foot chunks of land. And that sounds kind of crazy, but what it was is an opportunity for people to buy a piece of Scotland, which in Scotland turned you into a lady or a laird. And I actually, for Christmas a couple of years ago, I bought Fiona 10 square feet of land, and she's now officially known as Lady Fiona. And I think it was about $200, might have been a bit more. But the program was so successful that they completely subscribed their initial land purchase and are now on their third or fourth land purchase, just at the massive number of people that are interested in reclaiming Scotland in that way, and just finding the whole thing very interesting. Now, how many people do we think there would be across Canada that would be interested in buying a piece of the prairies? What that looks like on the ground is while Fiona is the legal title holder of that 10 square feet, there's obviously she's not in control of development of it. But what happened was people were very interested in going to see their 10 square feet of land. And the area around the Highland Titles land is now a tourist destination. And people were making it part of their summer holidays to go. And they would get one free visit where their land was sort of set aside by GPS coordinates. And they get a golf cart ride out to their land where they were shown. And I just think that this Highland Titles model could be an excellent opportunity for people from across Canada to put out a little bit of money in order to be a part of something that's really, really special. And it's not money that you would have to pay back. And I think it's a way of doing education differently, and being able to raise some resources. So Highland Titles, you can check that out on the internet, but whether it's 10 square feet or 100 square feet that we could sell, it might be, we set aside 5 or 10 acres to do that to start with. And if we were to get 1,000 customers at even $100 a customer, that's $100,000 of revenue just from that one business alone. Then that would also help support some of the other activities that we've already identified, such as the 4-season vacation opportunities that would be available for people to get out of the city. And sorry, I actually wanted to make one more point, which is a way to engage foundations. I just want to come back to that, and we're going to open up, and maybe, Raj, maybe it might be good to go around the circle again. I'll leave that up to you. But to engage foundations, keeping in mind that there are 10,000 foundations in Canada with $73 billion in assets. Well, some of that 73 billion, I don't know what percentage, but a high percentage of it is in land and property ownership already. And wouldn't it be interesting to go to foundations that are wanting to get more social and environmental impact out of their endowments, and for them to say, look, your farm is worth $2 million. We would be very interested in making an investment of $500,000 and having a silent share of the value of that farm. And we would just simply put that on our asset sheet and just let it sit there as an asset to lower the upfront purchase price of the farm. I think that's something that foundations would be extremely interested in once we pull together this business plan, and saying to them, look, you've got $500,000 invested in Kentucky Fried Chicken. Why don't you take it out of that and put it invested in this project? And I think they'd be very interested investment partners. So attracting investment from foundations to drive down the upfront capital cost of the purchase of the farm. And I think foundations might also be interested in funding, not investing, but in addition to investing, funding the business development. The Government of Canada last November put out a $805 million social finance strategy. And we worked with NEWO to make an application to a $50 million investment readiness fund. And I think that what they're looking for is very transformative ideas that are very replicable. And I think it's entirely possible that we could engage foundations in getting some funding because it's a very exciting and transformative model, and having them, for example, sponsor the construction of 4 or 5 yurts, and we would put their name on it, Edmonton Foundation yurt number 1, Edmonton Foundation yurt number 2. So I think it's an opportunity to offer to foundations that kind of value as well.
Just on that note, Kaz and I worked on an investment readiness application for this round. I forget what it's worth, Kaz, maybe $70,000, basically to do some of the foundational work that Sean's suggesting, including, for example, looking into how we would legally set up the Highland title structure in the Canadian context. And Mum reminded me that when the Highland titles in Scotland was first suggested by the daughter of the guy who got it going, he just told her basically that she was crazy and it was a very stupid idea. And since that time, they've actually created 2 major conservation areas in Scotland through just the Highland titles fundraising model alone.
So the father's pretty pleased.
Yeah, the father's pretty happy.
Okay, Raj, can you lead us through then getting some feedback on these ideas?
Sure.
Invite people to say, well, that's not going to work, or that would work, or to add to the list.
Yeah.
Would be great to hear from folks now.
Yeah, so I got an email from Don. He's just here's a few ideas and thoughts that he's sending. First, the health connection is a great idea. Knowing Dr. Dina Hinshaw offers a great opportunity to have the discussion, as she is a holistic thinker.
She's from
yeah, I don't know if folks know outside of the Alberta context, but Dr. Hinshaw is becoming very famous and extremely well respected. She's Alberta's chief medical officer and just is handling it with such cool, calm, and thoughtfulness. She actually was in the first Spirit of the Land class ever, which was held 10 years before the official one. Anyway, she's been on the news a lot, and sounds like Don correctly thinks that she'd be very supportive of these ideas. He's also saying another conversation that's needed is with rural municipalities. They're entrenched in a paradigm whose time is no longer meeting the needs of the present or the future. And yeah, I think one of the neat things about this idea is reflected in a conversation we had with the Camrose County Reeve. This was it January, I think, and how receptive folks in the county regions are to cooperatives and other models for building community. They're very well aware of their diminishing tax base, the lack of industries that are supporting also, again, taxes that they need to clear the roads, et cetera, et cetera. So I think they'd be more open than certainly they would have been 5-10 years ago.
And interested in urban-rural connection.
Yeah, and very much interested in the urban-rural connection. Feeling somewhat under assault, I guess. It was the sense we got of misinformation and farmers being, in her view, unfairly criticized or characterized as destroying ecological services. So bringing more families onto a farm is an example that is non-negotiable with county administration. And then I think Don's alluding to current zoning restrictions, but my sense is that these will be relaxed as the kind of depopulation really hits home. And Don saying the coronavirus, although a horrible tragedy, is going to open opportunities for discussion regarding these ideas being shared today. It is humbling us to realize that the collective, quote unquote, we do not have all the answers like we thought we did a few months ago. And then one caution that is required with many of these great ideas is we have to understand that all of the biodiversity that our farm may have can be compromised by having too many people moving around. This can be managed, but takes some planning. And yeah, each one of these ideas seems to have its own, own thought process that will have to be carefully walked through. So, and finally, Don mentioned Forest Camps for Kids program across Canada offers children the opportunity to connect with nature. That could be expanded to getting kids onto farms to connect them with nature and how food is grown and raised. And on that note, I saw last week, one of the consequences of depopulation is that schools are closing. So just within this week, the Battle River School Division closed 3 schools. And the one school that they voted to remain open was a school whose community got together and they decided that they were going to create a working farm as their school. So they were featured on Global News being interviewed, and they really want to, it kind of sounded like create a business and have that as their school model. And it sounds like there are lots of interest of folks from various places interested in sending their kids to this school because they think it's a great idea. So it's one example of how, you know, this a school closure or the problem of closing schools has led to innovation just in Round Hill, which is like 10-15 minutes north of here. So that's from Don. Let's maybe Kaz, I'm going to start with you because you may have a few ideas, and let's hear your comments and thoughts, and then we'll move around the circle so everybody has a chance to comment if they wish.
Sure. Is there anything specifically you want me to comment on, or just kind of all the ideas that we've got going for on-farm businesses and that sort of thing?
Yeah, anything to add or limits in the ones that have been proposed, or other thoughts you may have in general?
I think it's an excellent list, and there are things coming up that I hadn't even considered before. I like the idea of some kind of festival out there. I think that's really cool. And the camping and yurts is a cool option too, because that's something we could get in place with a lot less regulatory approvals than building cabins or actually building like a community out there. So that would be a very cool way of getting more people involved with the land and maybe making a little bit of money there. Lots of good ideas so far, but I don't have any new ones to contribute at the moment right now.
One question I had for you and other folks that may be tuning in from Edmonton is, if you are an urban land grower, what's a reasonable distance from Edmonton that would make sense if you're hoping to like get a piece of land or in the lease section?
Yeah, well, I know like Marianne Borch, who runs Goodnote Family Farm, which is just out at New Sarepta outside of Edmonton. Even she has a hard time getting people to go out to the land out there and participate in a CSA program out there and to farm on that land, which is probably 45 minutes outside of the city. And to get people out an hour and a half from the city out to Flagstaff County could be even more challenging. So I think it would have to be like a dedicated trip, maybe a weekend trip or something like that for people to go out there. I think it would have to be pretty close to the city for people to participate on a really regular basis. So I think having more like weekend events that draw a larger crowd out to help with projects would be a good thing. And then having some more dedicated people that are either living in the community, in the county, or on the farm to work on CSA projects and rotational grazing and that kind of thing would probably be the best way to go. But yeah, Edmonton is probably a little too far for kind of peripherally engaged people to make a regular trip out there, I would think.
Yeah, and then Nick's just commenting, have a bus that brings folks in from the town to stay at a week or however many days they wanted to stay at a place. And just as a sidebar from New Sarepta, my uncle recently told me a winter story of how my grandpa felled logs in New Sarepta and took them by horse-drawn sleigh into the Mill Creek Ravine in Edmonton. And it was so cold, he'd regularly have to get off the sleigh to like remove the icicles from the horse's nostrils so they could breathe. So it does show you how times have changed where folks in a car can't make the 40-minute trip.
Yeah. Well, maybe things will change a little bit if people have more time on their hands and people value local food and connecting with community more. Then maybe people will have more time to go out there on evenings or for a few days at a time to work on the farm, especially if we make it easy with a bus, or even just organizing carpooling from major urban centers could pull quite a few people out there without having to rent a bus and do all that. I also really like the idea of carbon offsets on the farm. And I didn't think that it would be feasible at a small scale, but if we could figure out some way of doing that, like creating a network of small farmers or small scale tree planters like my own business in Edmonton, if we could put all those together and create like a package of, you know, maybe several hundred trees planted in a year and a few hundred acres rotationally grazed, then we could actually, you know, produce a carbon offset product that people are interested in buying on the market. So maybe that's a possibility as well.
The other thing that comes to mind while you're speaking about the difficulties in Edmonton, if you have something like a music festival that connects people for another reason, then I think they're more likely to come visit that farm because they already have a connection. It's probably breaking that divide. I mean, people spend 40 minutes on a bus regularly in Edmonton, just in the city. So it's probably more a psychological divide than it is an actual physical time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. We're talking about like an hour and a half commute out to the farm, out to Sunrise at least, probably, right? Sure. But that's not unmanageable. I mean, road trips are fun, and yeah, people might jump on board with that. Especially we had like monthly events out there through the summer. Like the festival could be one big thing that happens in July or August, or maybe at a particularly important planting time, maybe in the spring. But then we could hold like, you know, full moon festivals out there on a monthly basis and bring out 20 or 30 people, and that could keep people more emotionally invested in the land.
Yeah. Katie, are you also in the Edmonton context? And you also run a business? You have
yeah, I run a gardening business in Edmonton, and just the thought of, you know, because I'm more mobile, I garden residences. Just the thought of somehow incorporating carbon sequestration as like another income sounds really cool to me. I'm not sure how that all works, but, you know, it would be interesting to try to find a way to use like plant trees and then essentially give businesses or companies some kind of certificate so that they can send in the government, or just something to like offset their carbon. And I was just thinking about Marianne's place. You know, I go out there quite a lot now, but there was a long time where I just didn't feel called to go out there. And you know, she has like all different reasons to get people out. She has like music nights, and she has her farm animals, and she has a little like community garden. And so there's like all these different reasons, and she also teaches workshops out there. And so some of the reasons why I actually go out there now is basket weaving, and I also sometimes receive product from her in exchange for helping out with her animals. So I think, yeah, having like a diverse array of offerings on a farm would really help people to come out on a more regular basis. Yeah, just kind of like getting people hooked on particular service or a particular product that they would have to go out there to get. So that they would have like maybe more reasons to go out there at one time, and making that trip more worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could learn a lot from Marianne's experience at Goodnote. She'd probably have a lot of good advice from us and a lot of hard lessons from how she's been managing things out there.
Yeah. She also comes out like to events and then offers a lot of things when she's there. Like she'll bring products with her, she'll give away things. She's pretty active in the community as well. So she's definitely an outlier in the fact that she's a very like present a lot of the time, like in the community and in Edmonton, and not just like hidden away on the farm.
Yeah, so she is very proactive in connecting her place with an urban scape.
Yeah. I don't necessarily have any like new ideas either. But yeah, it's all really cool. And it just seems like, yeah, diversifying as much as possible on any given farm just seems like the way to go. How to do that, like how to start, like where to start would be like, is an interesting, question. I guess food would be the first step.
Yeah, food is a great connector. I'm gonna put you on the spot, Alex, or other young agrarians. Lily, how do these ideas strike you, or have these things come up with it in other conversations with the young agrarians? How have you approached this issue, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to it. I don't know if I have too much to say, but I like the diversity of different ways to get money while on a piece of land. I think that is consistent with a lot of the farmers in our network who apply the same model, but with food products. So most farms are mixed farms, so they don't just have grain. They have maybe a bit of grain to feed their animals, and they have maybe some cows and some chickens and some veggies. And so the idea is that if one doesn't do well, say the vegetable garden does really poorly because it's a really rainy winter or really rainy summer, then maybe your chickens would do better or something like that. So the idea is to kind of, yeah, like Kitty was saying, have diverse enterprises, I think is really valuable. I think what strikes me here is that these enterprises, I think, would be, if you're farming, would be very difficult to do on top of farming, especially if you kind of have year-round enterprises. There's a lot of work to be done on the farm already. And so to kind of add on, say, planning a music festival would, I think, be awesome, but be very difficult for farmers to do. Which I think is a challenge because the farmers are living on the land, but maybe is a really big benefit because it allows people who are passionate about local food and farming, but don't actually want to be farmers. It's a good way to get those people involved in caring for the land, using the skills that they have, which might not necessarily be farming. So if it was just a farmer farming a quarter section or a section, it would be very difficult to implement any of these. But if we can get many people involved and kind of work out these really good win-win situations, then I think it can, yeah, can provide a lot of value from a community setting, but also a monetary setting.
That was a question I had as well. And this is where I guess a diverse group like the ones we have now, like I see each one of these things, even just taking out, for example, the mental health healing center, that's a huge undertaking just unto itself that would be impossible for someone who's trying to make a living off farming, for example, to set up. But maybe we can, as we subdivide these things, find folks that are willing to take on a piece and run with it. And then, you know, when we put our pieces together, then we can make a model that works. What about you, Lily and Peace River?
One idea that hasn't been brought up yet, I think, is like having farm dinners, bringing people out to have farm dinners and use this chance to educate your consumer. That's something that has come up quite a bit amongst young agrarians when we talk. And it's also just really important to focus on maybe one thing. Like it's so easy. Like all of those things take a lot of work, a lot of effort. And what are farmers able to organize besides their daily farm schedule? Yeah, what's realistic and what goes along with their values is something to consider as well.
Mm-hmm. Can you extrapolate on what goes along with values? What are you meaning by that?
I just know from like some people really are out in the land. They are their own bosses. They get to spend with nature on their own. Not everybody is happy to see a lot of people every day. I guess when it comes to all those projects, people just have to be really honest about what are they willing to take on and what is it actually what they want to do.
Raj, I just want to, Lily's got some excellent comments there. I guess how we were thinking of what this might look like is not, 4 or 5 people. This could be, 30 or 40 people employed part or full time. That, there would be some people dedicated to running each of the different business sections. And the design of the farm would be really key. Obviously, we don't want to have a farm with people traipsing all over it. That really wasn't the idea. The idea is that 640 acres is a huge chunk of land. And I know 10 acres is a pretty decent sized farm to keep us a couple people busy all year long. I mean, you could do a lot on 10 acres. And so, if you had 5 10-acre farms set aside, not where people are going to be traipsing all over it, but, kind of designed in a way that they would be out of the way and be able to do their thing in peace. I think that but the revenue would come in from the lease to own arrangements. But the key is, I think that those 2 people that would be farming those 10 acres, that's all they'd have to worry about. Like that would be their piece. Also on the idea of the farm dinners, in Winnipeg here, and this is maybe the case elsewhere, but there are some chefs that put on tables for 1,000 and in the city, and they use food from these local sustainable farmers, and you buy the tickets ahead of time, and it's a total surprise as to where the supper is going to be and what it is that you'd be eating. But you're just told through an app is like, okay, supper is on the Provenche Bridge, and wear white. So then people just go, and there's literally a table set for 1,000 people, and it's all local food, and it's a lot of fun. And the city closes down whatever that interesting place was, so people can have a unique experience with local food being sort of the connector. So I love that. I love that point. But just wanted to, and some of that I guess is in response to Alex's very good comments as well.
I think, yeah, I also wanted to affirm Lily's point. My connection to farming is through my grandfather, who is from Scotland and fiercely independent, and really appreciated being his own boss. And I think part of the challenge from the outset that I saw for the cooperative is getting this balance right between folks who do value that quiet and that independence, and then also this need for interdependence, where you have folks connecting with the land and understanding the value of this quality of produce. So, and I think we'd want to get that balance right, where the folks who do like the quiet can have quiet, and the other elements can be supportive but not interfere with how people are wanting to live. Nicholas, joining us from the southern parts of the province. Any comments or thoughts? I've seen you had a few in the chat.
Yeah, so I guess there's lots of great ideas here. The one that, a couple of them that stood out to me is, I think, speaking of, like, say, looking at zones and stuff, I think the idea is to have like a zone 5 on the farm, like a section of land that would be left as reserve, as native. And that's where I think the idea for the Highland titles is really cool. Once again, I don't know how that works in a Canadian, I guess, setup, because titles are different here. But that's a neat idea to explore. Direct Carl Brown offset was a very neat one. I think there's definitely a tough balance between what do you call it? Drawing people out for, say, short-term activities, given the fact that it is pretty far out of town. But, if we work with partners and stakeholders, say in Edmonton, to do functions in the city itself, and we're just participating and supporting them, I think that's a great way to create awareness of the farm and what it's doing. Yeah, there's definitely opportunities, like in the social, say the social work, to work with kids and to get sponsorships to work with kids that are, say, maybe in a high risk situation or don't have families. But once again, you'd want to get someone familiar in that area to run something like that. So, yeah, I think it's a matter of, having different parts of the farm that fulfill different functions and dividing that up amongst members of the co-op or other stakeholders that are invested in it. Yeah, I really like the value of academia, and so, you know, the more we could do to teach people from the land, it doesn't necessarily have to always be on site, but there's the opportunity to do videos and courses and partner with, say, the university, as someone suggested, or with schools. There's definitely opportunities there. Yeah. I think, yeah, but was it Alex, I think, that mentioned, you know, or someone else, anyways, it does take a matter of having somebody specialized in an area and having focus on that area. Because if you have one management person trying to oversee everything, they're just going to be scattered and not able to succeed. But that's where the co-op model is a tremendous opportunity, because you can get 20 people working on 20 different things that might actually intertwine together and create synergies. And you don't have to have that trying to do 20 different things. You've got 20 different people working together to accomplish 20 different things. Anyways, so I guess that's my thoughts.
Just to affirm what you're saying, it almost seems like we're trying to I don't want to say recreate, but of sorts recreate a village out in the rural areas. Like, villages were these places where sick people, elderly, you know, good food, these interconnections happened organically. And I think we're seeing the effects of when that village is destroyed. Yeah, and so I guess I see in its healthiest form, we recreate the villages in the rural, and we have really good interaction with urban centers. As folks are chatting about these farm dinners, I think you made a good point about having the dinners in the city. So, you know, bringing the good food and the wholesome community connection to the city, which is happening in all sorts of ways already. I did go to one restaurant that was extremely expensive in Edmonton. I can't even remember the name, but they had all like the specific farms where their venison or their beef came from. And, you know, one way of doing that is just opening up a little, it could be a regular dinner in the city or even a restaurant that featured the cooperative. But I think, yeah, I hadn't thought of this notion of having a stronger co-op presence in the city itself. Yeah, Linda, yeah, or Linda, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yes, so much so. I feel that the time invested this morning has really produced a great profit. I am really concerned about the shift after the hysteria ends. And I guess the thing that stays with me most is to find the upside of down. And what's helped me so much was to be able to hear and write down all this entrepreneurial language, which I did not have, and to have visions of social enterprises. I have a million ideas, and I look forward to gathering with people in Camrose, which I know will happen. But particularly what stays with me is finding the upside of down and starting informed, creative, and positive conversations.
Thanks, Linda. What about you, Trevor? I'm just going to unmute you 1 sec. See if that works.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. I was thinking of the Ireland story and how we don't think outside of the box. And that this conversation today has really helped to open up the box so that we can see and think outside of it. And I too am looking forward to conversation. But I was thinking also of Mistahaya, that's my sister's ski lodge, and they're 75 and 80 now. And they are in the process of trying to sell. And there they have done teaching of language, they've done music, mountain biking, hiking, they have trails, cross-country, downhill, canoeing, and lots of opportunities for solar, you know, being by the river, there's anyway, and they're surrounded by Crown land. So there's opportunities on Crown land as well. You know, it's so exciting. We don't know where we're going to head. They have this music festival that happens, and they say that people come because of the land. They only charge $15 a night. The music festival is reasonable itself, and it's always full, even if it's raining. They do events, weddings, etc. And I think of the Highland titles there. They have grasslands, and they have artifacts that have come up out of the earth when they put in the ski facility that are over 1 million years old, like billions of years old. So people might be interested in, you know, purchasing some of these ancient pieces that stay on the land, of course. And they have this huge lodge that is, so there's, you know, something is already created, but where it would go. I'm disappointed my sister didn't get in on this conversation, but I'm going to pass it along to her. They've had forest nature camps for children. You know, they've done a lot, and they are isolated. It's rural, and they are away from larger centers, but they're close to Wainwright, which has the army camp, and they have a lot of people coming out from the army camp using the facility. They're mostly French. And so I think, you know, they really appreciate those kinds of things that are available to them. And as Linda says, the upside of Down, there are so many possibilities, and I'm really excited to be on board. And thank you, Sean, for your insights, and Raj for facilitating us here locally. Hi, Margaret. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda Bomer?
So I think that's what Celine was saying about Mistahaya too. She's been mentioning kids camps and whatnot was also Mistahaya.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Brenda Bomer, can you hear us? You're someone who's farming and.
Oh, I can't hear you, Rajan. Are you talking to me?
Oh. Can folks hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Rush.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering if Brenda had a few thoughts. She's a farmer on the other side of this, looking to transition into selling her land. I see your name, but if I unmute you here. Are you there, Brenda? Oh. Well, we'll wait for Brenda. Who have I missed here? Dawn and Marie and Ed are joining us via the YouTube.
And Mary.
And Mary. Anyone who, oh, Maya.
So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. I think that it's exciting to gather ideas, and I can kind of feel the energy mounting. But yeah, I just want to say thank you to you all for organizing this and for having us be a part.
Awesome.
Can you hear me, Raj?
And
yeah.
Bomer just sent a message.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I just want to, of course, say thanks to Margaret and Raj and Sean and Fiona and so on, and everybody. And for me, what an example of magic that happens when people get together like this. So my request is a follow-up ASAP, and let's somehow meet in Camrose and take all these wonderful, wonderful ideas and put them into action. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. And Don, I'm just going to give him a call so he and Marie can join us via the regular phone.
My request is a follow-up ASAP.
Oh, someone watching on YouTube is. There we go. Hey, Don. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're on speakerphone, so everyone can hear you, I think.
Okay. Well,
Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead. You've got the floor. We're all.
The air race.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty hard to say add anything more than what has been said. I was privileged to hear Sean speak at Spirit of the Land Conference. I think it was in 2015, and I thought it was a bit of a sleeper, and it's proven to be because he has such a vast amount of knowledge and information to share, and I'm overwhelmed. And like any meeting, people often wonder if the right people are going to show up, and darned if they didn't again. Thank you not only to Raj and Margaret for organizing this, but also to Sean for sharing his knowledge and wisdom, and above all, passion. And to all the rest of you, I feel like we're a part of a very, very important community, and there's tremendous ability from the ideas shared here today to expand that community. So, yeah, Marie and I are both overwhelmed with all the information and love that has been shared here today. So thank you all, and stay safe.
Thanks so much, Don. Yeah, very much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, to you and Marie for being such great examples for us. So, Sean, Lucas, Fiona, or any others, anyone who has further thoughts who hasn't spoken, or I'll leave it to Sean and Lucas to kind of close us down.
Can I say a quick something?
Oh yeah, who's this? Oh,
Jason.
It's Jason. Oh,
yeah.
Jasper, Jason. Go for it.
Hope everyone can hear me. It's really encouraging to hear some of these ideas that I have to say have run through my mind, and other shared sentiment that they can be done. I think I thought of them on a different scale. You're talking about involving 20 to 30 people, which completely makes sense. But I thought, oh, that's too many people for one farm. But in this shift towards gig economy, people have other jobs and bringing in a wealth of talent. And I think this type of model is for not kind of the individual ownership. And this speaks a little bit to what Lily was saying about the style and having people on the farm or not, or how that looks like and how that shifts. And I think when you can't own your land and you want to be involved in community, this is a great, the dependency on multiple people, and possibly this co-op model brings strength to it and diversity. And maybe this is only going to be one aspect of what people do, but
yeah, I think that's where the key to this word comes in, is social, and people have to choose what they want in their farm, and if that's essential social focus versus more of the solitude, not complete solitude, that's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. And there's that aspect that is really valued as well too. And so I guess it's whatever we are enabled to do. Myself personally, I'm dependent on the power of numbers rather than the ability to find my own oasis. And so that's just going to be a component that I have to look towards. And with regards to the locale, Kaz, I think, was talking about this. That's something I've certainly thought about. Don and Marie's farm, Sunrise Farm, it is too far from the city for people to kind of regularly and independently be involved. And I've certainly thought about the whole camping thing. And maybe like, for people to go out and just farm, you've got to be within 45 minutes of Edmonton or the city. But for a weekend camping trip, more or less, if whatever it is, if you're buying a small plot of land, or you're buying a small plot, or investing or renting a small area to garden, maybe you're also renting that yurt or something like that to give people their oasis. I know a lot of people want cabins, and it's not give, it's rent, of course, but a lot of people want cabins and can't necessarily afford it. And a lot of people do want to grow food. So that could be hitting on something that combines some of those aspects a little bit. But yeah, and then overall, to the overall ideas that Sean's been promoting, like I said, I've toyed with some of these exact ideas, and it's taking it from now, when you're one individual or two or three, into fruition of 10 or 20 or 30 people. That transition sort of, and where does kind of land ownership come into play? Because you talk about $25,000 here and $50,000 there, but you need to, I guess, what are the first steps? And that's where I think Don was saying, or somebody was saying about a follow-up step to this meeting is, how do you make that next step? Do you need 10 different entities all ramped up saying, okay, we're ready to go, these are our business model projections? Then you put that forward to investors. And I'm toying with investors and talking to them right now as well too. Anyways, that's sort of where I'm at with these questions is we've got these ideas, but how do we take one step at a time? And especially together with other people. Anyways, I rambled on for a long time and it's late, so I'll stop there. Thank you very much for this.
Very well spoken, Jason. I think you covered some of the complexities of social and interdependence very well. I do know we also have Lisa Sharp, who's joined us via YouTube. Lisa's generous donation was a significant impetus for us to invite Sean and to have Sean and Lucas share with us today. So thanks so much to Lisa. Sean or Lucas, Fiona, any further, I guess, facilitation from your side, having heard from the round?
We'll let Fiona, Lucas, and then Sean.
Okay, I just wanted to add one more note. I think with the co-housing, you can use condominium law, but I'm not sure how that works in agricultural zoned areas. So anyways, that's a possibility of maybe having some part of the land zoned that way. And then another market you might want to consider is all the fitness cyclists, and like being on some kind of a loop or a tour, like of people who want to get out of the city and cycle or hike or cross country ski or something like that. And your your spot might be one of the places they could stay, like an Airbnb or something like that, and maybe connect with other farms as well. If you're too far away to cycle from Edmonton in one day, maybe you could be the second day or something. Yeah, that's it. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to hear from you all.
Well, when we have our network of multiple farms, we'll just have people cycle from one farm to another.
This is Celine. I just had a couple more ideas. Beehives. There's a lot of pollinators on farms, so he first he would want to go on the land and put their hives. And further to the university idea, a lot of the courses are online now, but it would probably still be possible to take the students out on retreat periodically to the land. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah, I had busing the elderly to a farm setting that may warm their heart at being connected to land again. And I guess that's about it. Thank you, everyone. I've really enjoyed hearing all the sharing. And I hope this goes. Bye for now.
Thank you, Celine. The last idea, busing elderly to the farm. What a great idea.
I think I just wanted to, when we're listing all the things we, listing all the things we have as far as assets, it's good to know that the property that we're looking at is an hour and a half from Edmonton, right? Like that's not a detriment. That's like a thing. It's just a thing, right? And if, because that will be attractive for some people, right? If there is, you know, if we want to talk about like some type of wellness component, as far as being able to go somewhere and disconnect, or go somewhere and reset, be in the presence of the land, and that is in a place that is very different from where they are coming from, right? That's not a detriment, that's an asset. It's all in how you market it. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind.
Okay, I'll maybe just make some concluding comments to pick up on what Jason was saying in terms of next steps. I think, Raj, what we could do is Lucas and I could gather up some of these thoughts and ideas, and maybe if everybody's got the time and energy, we could schedule another session where we could start to dive in a bit more into, we could group some of these into sort of business sections and start to work a bit on notional marketing strategies, for example, you know, list out some further creative ideas, and then look at some of the business generation that can come from each cost center. It would be good to have some marketing people at the next session, and communications kind of skills would be key. And it's like someone like Jessica, for example, could be really key, because having an understanding of each cost center and being able to communicate it to investors will be really key in next steps. And I think the next step is actually to get some money from a foundation or even from the Investment Readiness Fund to put towards really coming up with a solid business plan, and what each of the cost centers might look like. So I could throw that out there. I guess I think Jason was getting to that and what that would look like. We can prepare for that and have a equally productive conversation next time around. The next comment I wanted to make was just in relation to the money. I think that when you're in the business world, there's a trick to connecting what it is that we have to what it is that we need. And if we want something that's replicable, we really got to focus on capturing that value. So I think that focusing on, coming up with a plan that is kind and generous to the community and gentle on the land and invigorating, but that also generates $200,000 in revenue annually is going to be really key. And I think one of the things we can do next time is kind of get some specific feedback on each idea and how likely they might be to happen, and what might be the low end and high end in terms of revenue projections. I think that'll be really key. The last comment I wanted to make is, before handing it back to you, Raj, is something that Lucas and I have experienced many times over the years, is that once we got into the game of being entrepreneurial, things just started to happen. And we kind of laugh about it as kind of the universe responding. And one time, for example, we both kind of said out loud that we'd really love to have an Indigenous red seal carpenter, and that we were looking to hire somebody that fit that description. Indigenous, that they could be a good role model for the folks at Build that we're working with. And a couple days later, this guy walked in, and he was a red seal carpenter and black. And we both kind of chuckled at each other thinking, well, that's pretty close. And but we weren't specific enough to the universe, because it turned out the guy had a great way about him, but he wasn't a very good carpenter. So we had to get a little more specific with our request to the universe and say, we want ideally someone that is Indigenous, red seal, and really both qualified and capable and competent. And we've just found that people have kind of surfaced at the right time, with the right skills, with the right ideas, but it takes that jump to get into an entrepreneurial space in order to free up all of that creativity. And that one slide that we showed about the two kinds of money, I think, is really important. There's a massive amount of money circulating out there, and we just have to find good ways of getting into those revenue streams. And we've got what it takes to really be successful in attracting those revenues. We've got really great ideas and value that we can offer. But it takes really getting into that space in order to make those things happen. And we're really excited to continue to have some of these conversations with you, if that's something that there's interested in doing. And I've also enjoyed the morning thoroughly, and I've enjoyed the chats with you, Raj, over the last year about all this. It's kind of a different context, but I think a lot of the things that we've learned Lucas and I have learned over the last 13 years and have been learned at NAWO Global Energy as well are totally come to play. So what a fantastic morning, and thank everybody for your time and energy, passion and compassion.
Yeah, not much to add from my side. Just thank you to everyone for joining us. It's humbling to have, so many people gathered. And thank you so much to Lisa for her generosity in supporting this, and to Sean and Lucas and Fiona for their time, and to everyone. I think our ideas are so crazy. Basically, in order for these things to happen, there's a little bit of magic that needs to occur, and yeah, but I think we also need to prepare for that magic. So yeah, thanks everyone for putting their offerings to the center, and we'll see where this goes. We'll have some conversations, and maybe in a few weeks, if there's interest, we can have another gathering and take this one step further.
Saturday morning.
The one I guess in May, we'll know about the investment readiness program, which basically will support projects to get them ready for major capital investment. So, you know, one more conversation amongst our group can take that a step forward, and then there may be, you know, $60,000 to $70,000 come our way in May when the funds are released. So who knows? Who knows? Anyways, thanks from all of us for joining us. Everyone stay safe, be well, be kind, and enjoy the many silver linings that come at this time. Okay, so bye all.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye, Katie.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Guys.
I keep having more and more ideas, though.
Thanks, Lynn. Cool. Okay. Bye for now. Stay safe. Be well.
Take care. Talk to you soon.
Okay. So long.